and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
JJ, you already said I was going to ask you before you sat, just ask them to be a little quiet up there. Just give a little.
They might be able to hear you if you ask them. I'll put the speaker on out there.
Thank you. Commissioner Boyce, do we have a line of duty report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes. Boy, we've had quite a jump in the police officers that have been killed in the line of duty from, in the last 30 days, up 30 to 83. You may recall that in 2019 it's 146. So the curve that we were going was a little bit better than 2019, but we just lost that. So we're hopeful, praying that that will change 2020, and we'll have very few in the next 30 days and the rest of 2020. Also, Mr. Chair, honor the fallen in the military deaths of 1 to 17. U.S. Fire Administration for 2020 up 3 to 35. I'd also like to read something, if I may. This Monday, the 25th, is Memorial Day. And sometimes people get confused between Veterans Day and Memorial Day. So it's, next year it'll be the 31st, but now it's the 25th, this coming Monday. I would ask Eric to turn to the photo of Arlington Cemetery. As you know, thousands of tombstones there, and our precious soldiers buried for almost 200 years. Memorial Day commemorates the men and women who died while in the military service of their country, particularly those who died in battle or as a result of wounds sustained in battle. In other words, the purpose of Memorial Day is to memorialize the veterans who made the ultimate sacrifice for their country. We spend time remembering those who lost their lives and could not come home, reflecting on their service and why we have the luxury and freedom that we enjoy today. We might consider how we can support and safeguard their grieving families and loved ones who are left behind. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Do we have any amendments to the agenda?
I have one.
Ms. Schmelzer?
I would just like to add 6G, which is approve an order for a credit card for the new Parks Director, Parks Coordinator.
And Mr. Chair, under the executive...
One moment, please.
Oh, sir, sure.
I'd just like to make my notes right away.
Yep, no, good.
Thank you, sir. Counsel?
Yes, and under executive session, if we've got 192-6602, H and K, legal advice, exempt matters, and litigation or litigation likely to be filed.
Okay. Busy day today.
Mr. Chair, when you're ready?
Voice?
Just a question. I contacted Staff Jesuit and Council Huddle to request an executive session. I'm presuming it's under 10A. So I don't want to bring something up new if the board is unsuspecting.
Counsel?
Let me take a look.
And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And just, if Commissioner Boyce asked me about executive session, I would have just provided him with the appropriate statute number. I would not have taken any steps to add it to the agenda myself.
Okay,
So,
I think it's added. We can deal when we get there. Thank you again.
Yep, it is. At least what you talked to me about is covered by the items on there.
Thank you again.
Anything further? A motion, please?
I move we approve the agenda as amended.
Second Chair Pash.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Moving on, we're going to move to public comments. We have two for this section. Gordon Clay. Morning, Mr. Clay. Are you good? All right. I'm just checking the shirt there.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, and guests. For the record, my name is Gordon Clay from Brookings, Oregon. This is a reminder that May is Mental Health Month, and at this time in our history, this might be the most important time we've ever had to find ways to stay connected with friends, neighbors, colleagues, and family members. And in these connections, to be very aware of how you and your friends are feeling and talk about those feelings. Ensure that they know that you care. Unfortunately, this comes at a time during the pandemic and during a time of proposed major cuts in behavioral health. For anyone who wants heavy data on Oregon and mental health, the recent report from Mental Health America 2020 shows that while Oregon ranks second in the country for mental health workforce availability, up from 7th in 2013, Oregon ranked 41st with adults with any mental illness who did not receive treatment, ranked 48th in adults with AMI reporting unmet need, ranked 24th in adults with AMI who are uninsured, and 26th with adults with cognitive disabilities who could not see a doctor due to costs. Oregon ranked 21st with youth with MDE who did not receive mental services, and 19th with children with private insurance that did not cover mental or emotional health. Oregon ranked 50th in adults with any mental illness, 48th in substance abuse disorder in the past year, 46th in serious thoughts of suicide, and we ranked 50th in youth having had at least one major depression episode in the past year, 44th in youth with substance use disorder in the past year, and 49th with youth with severe MDE. This can be found at zeroattempts.org/MHA2020.html. Added to this fact that Oregon was the only state that had 4 age groups from 15 to 54 where suicide was the leading cause of death in 2017. I provided those two charts for your perusal. That information can be found at zeroattempts.org/leading-causes-of-death-chart.html. I hope you use this information to write the governor or your Oregon legislature to make a case to at least hold funding constant as the need for behavioral health services is expected to increase, not decrease. During this pandemic, we can't afford to lose our mental health workforce, which, if they leave, may not return once the vaccine is discovered and widely distributed and our overall workforce is functioning on all cylinders. Our healthcare may suffer from the instability rural Oregon offers professional families. Write a letter and make a call today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Gordon, always great to see you, and thank you.
David Barnes. Morning, Mr. Barnes.
Good morning, David Barnes. I have to speak about the election that ended yesterday. From my point of view, it's one of the most unfair elections I've ever seen in my life. As a citizen of this county, I'm pretty much outraged that corruption and kleptocracy and cronyism won the day. There's people in this room who knew information about a candidate in yesterday's election. They withheld that information from the public and deprived the public of the right to choose a more appropriate person to represent us. To me, that is just inexcusable. There's behavior that's so bad that people who work for this county have offered to resign. One sitting at this desk up in front of you is offered a resignation as of July 1st because of behavior that's so bad that she doesn't want to compromise her integrity any further by being a part of this commission. And yet this didn't come to public light before the election. It didn't come out until after the time when candidates had a chance to file. You know, Ms. Schmelzer, you get to go home next month or in July, 6 weeks. You're moving back to Wisconsin. Us, we're stuck with your choice of keeping this from us. And for that, I'm sorry, but I cannot forgive you for that. You know, you sat on information that should have become public over a year ago and did nothing about it. And, you know, we got stuck with your choice. And for that, I'm disappointed. Thank you.
Moving on to 5 presentations. Roger Gitlin, Del Norte County Supervisor, and Del Norte County business people address regarding COVID-19.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
At the request of myself and to connect with at least a part of the Del Norte County 5 supervisors, want to welcome you and the wonderful group you brought. We have some distinguished guests here. They're going to make about a 15-minute, maybe 20-minute presentation. They're going to have questions. And we just want to give you a huge welcome. Thanks for making the hour drive up. And we know we know that Curry County is your favorite county other than Del Norte. Thanks for coming up today. Great to see you again.
Thank you, Vice Chair Court Boyce, Chairman Pash, Commissioner Gold. Thank you for the invitation. I am the District 1 Supervisor for Del Norte County, but I'm here as a private citizen, and I want to make that very clear. I'm not up here as the designee from our Board of Supervisors. So I want to officially and publicly thank Curry County for the courageous move it took in opening up your economy last Friday, May 15th. I also want to commend you under enormous pressure to do the right thing and open up your county under the current crisis that we're in, and that was the first part of my purpose of being here. I've also brought with me a cross-section of some of our businesses in Del Norte County who wish to likewise congratulate the Board of Commissioners and also to ask questions about how your rollout is going, how many cases you have. We've recently had a spike in the number of cases. I might add all unhospitalized, all of them unhospitalized. I think we're 13 now. And many of them are coming on and then within 72 hours are being discharged. We have one current case at Pelican Bay State Prison. It's a corrections officer. We don't know how he contracted the virus, but he is at home recuperating. And of course, the good news is no deaths. So what I'd like to do is, without taking any additional time personally, there are a lot of questions here. I would like to bring in some of our people who are standing in the hall who would like to make comments and ask you specific questions about your rollout. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to introduce at this time Tony Barnes, who is Tab Associates. He's a major commercial property owner in Crescent City, and in Oregon, Lincoln City. He has a vested interest in watching our community grow, and he's also looking for a place to have a dine-in sitting to have lunch one day in Del Norte County. Apparently, we have to come up to Curry County to do that at this point. So, Mr. Barnes, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, sir.
The border doesn't stop at Brookings, by the way. Welcome again, though.
Thank you all for having us up here. As Roger said, my name's Tony Barnes, Thomas Barnes. We do business in California, in Sacramento, Crescent City. We're a real estate holding company, for your information, for the background. We have holdings in Curry County, Douglas County, and Lincoln County in Oregon also. So we are operating in both California and Oregon, and I have offices in both California and Oregon. I'm here to, first of all, congratulations on your rollout and your reopening. I have people from California right now that are up in Lincoln City, and so I'll be talking to them later today to get their perspective on how they think that is going. But I'm here for two reasons. Number one, we're sister communities, and I know Roger Gitlin said that he is here as a private member of the community, but we're close. I would like to see a closer cooperation. I think that we can learn from you. I think you folks can learn from us. We share a lot of common interests, so my interest would be, and I will promote it down in California, but my interest would be, I think it could be worthwhile if we could get a good dialogue. Maybe it exists already, I don't know, but perhaps we could get a good dialogue and learn from each other. As you know, we're behind you as far as reopening down in California. I also come from Sacramento, and I can tell you that that's a different world down there than it is up here in Del Norte County and in Curry County. It's more difficult, to say the least. Small businesses, as you know, are tremendously affected by what is happening right now with this. It is extremely trying. They're being damaged, and I'm sure you all realize that small businesses, and I'm talking really, the people that are really feeling it the most are people that deal with the public, like restaurants, motels, hotels, small retailers, people that are feeling it. I'm sure that we all realize that these people, they're the taxpayers, they're the businesses, they're the ones that keep these communities going. And so, from my perspective, I would just like to, anything and everything that can be done to help these businesses get reopened and reestablished would be great. Really don't have any questions other than to say these are trying times. I do business in both areas, so I'm going to be interested to see what the difference is between California and Oregon. Do you folks have any questions of me as far as a representative of the business community that has the perspective of both states, perhaps?
No,
Okay. This is new to all of us. So again, I want to promote good relations between the two counties here. I would like to see us get involved more with you guys and you guys get involved more with us. And whatever we can do to help the small businesses that are going to be standing behind me and coming up and speaking is helpful.
your name again, sir?
I'm Thomas Barnes.
Very, very good presentation. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Sherry Scott, and this is my partner, Ed Salcido. And we thank you for your time this morning, and Ed wanted to make an opening statement for us.
Well, I just, thank you for having us. And we represent a small business. We have a small cafe, log cabin diner in Klamath. And we have been severely hurt, with the closures. I mean, we depend on monies to meet our other obligations. And my prime concern is the way the governors of both states have not taken into consideration the outlying communities, where up till yesterday or day before we had 5 cases in Del Norte County. And I don't know what they are in Curry County right now, but I really think that the supervisors, the commissioners, ought to put pressure back to the governors. We are a unique area. We're an open area. We cannot be treated like LA or San Francisco. And I'm just asking our Board of Supervisors and Commissioners of Oregon to just take a look at individual areas rather than one item fits all. Anyway, Sherry,
Thank you.
So I've been reading how you guys are doing your phase 1, which you guys are about 100 times more advanced than our phase 2 is. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate that, and I'm hoping that we can catch up to you. I have some questions. I know that I pulled off your phase 1 reopening for your restaurants, and a lot of the procedures that you guys have put into place mirror that of the county health departments. Is that correct? Except for the 6 feet and the masks is about the only difference, because I think it would be somehow to get the information that the procedures you put into place is what the county health department requires food and beverage to do every day. This isn't something new. We didn't just learn to wash our hands. We didn't just learn to sanitize our stations. We've been doing this I've been in the business since I was 15 years old. I'm only 25, but I still have a lot to, of knowledge in it. So I would like that to kind of come out is that saying, you know what, we know restaurants are doing this. The only thing that we've added to their dailies is the social distancing and the wearing of the masks, which when working in the restaurant business, if none of you have ever done that, wearing masks is going to be difficult. And the reason is because as you're talking to people, as you're getting and you're moving, that mask is moving. And so the first thing you want to do when your face itches is you're going to reach up and scratch your face. So I'm going to say that there's going to be a lot of face touching by wearing those masks. Once again, if you're right in the middle of doing something and you're talking and your face is itching and you're trying not to itch it, you're going to do all kinds of things. So I'm not sure how effective the mask will be in the long run. Also, with the social distancing, which makes most of our places at about a 50% capacity, which it's hard to make money at 100% capacity in the restaurant business, especially as small businesses. So how do you see in the next 6 months or 18 months restaurants getting back to being able to do 100% capacity? Because if they don't, they will not be able to sustain. And what I do see at that point is businesses shutting down. And that's what we want to avoid. So I want to know what your plan would be that we could take back to our county and look at getting our businesses back into that 100% and back into where we've got the tourists coming back in and supporting us. So what is your outlook for I guess should be your phase two?
I think a lot of the differences that we have that might mirror Del Norte counties would be that we have a lot of outdoors where the cities don't, as was spoken earlier. We're hopeful, I think, that not only will there be antibodies and that, the research that's currently going on right now with this will become more steep and more effective and get more testing on them, as well as a possible vaccine. That's going to take time, but, what's happening right now in a lot of these laboratories looks very promising. For me, I see our restaurants returning more to normal quicker, sooner than later. I see, I don't think that it's the board's job to micromanage restaurants. I don't believe it's this board's job to manage the local businesses. I think that has to do more with the CDC, with our local people that we have here to look for serious violations. But the economic fallout from this, I have stated here many times, is going to be far worse than COVID-19, and that will be far-reaching into the future. To answer your question, we have 5 cases. We had 4, which were all non-symptomatic, and then we just had a new one over the weekend who was actually a health worker down in Del Norte County, but they happen to reside here. All non-symptomatic, and we have also no deaths as well. So I don't know if the other commissioners wanted to speak on this. Commissioner Gold?
Let me just say one thing that possibly you might encourage your supervisors to do. We got with other rural counties and wrote a letter to the governor stating that we should be able to open regionally rural counties before the metro counties because things are so different. So
Yes. Okay.
I would suggest that.
Now, as us being able to only open at 50% capacity, bringing back a staff is right now is almost no. I mean, thank goodness Ed and I right now are running our restaurant, just the 2 of us, and we're doing it 7 days a week. We don't see that changing at 50% capacity at this point. So we're saying that now, is that going to increase the unemployment? Are they going to be able to stay on unemployment for the rest? I mean, for the rest of the season, if we don't move forward in being able to run our restaurants at 100% capacity? What's the economic impact for the employees who in our region do only work seasonally because we are closed down 4 months. Most places are in our area. So 4 months out of the year, they're on unemployment for sure because there's nothing going. So what do you guys see as your restaurants can't bring back their staff and their unemployment does begin to run out? What is your next plan for that?
Can I be along the same line? Can I make a statement? They have this payroll protection plan that comes out that was supposed to be a 1-page application. We applied for it, but they want 30 supporting documents. Finally, I told them, take it, and we don't need it. So we're doing it ourselves. And our employees are on regular state unemployment, but I'm not going to jump through any more of their hoops. After 30 pages of supporting documents, I'm done.
So, again, the devastation that's going to happen to people that have put up their life savings to open businesses, restaurants, these kind of things that are public service businesses is going to be enormous. And again, I would hope that the governors would look to, sooner than later to get some of these things reopened. I agree with Commissioner Gold's comment. There is power in numbers. If you can somehow get all of, social media is kind of hit and miss. But if you can get local governments and local businesses to all get on board and write a letter of one voice to your governor, I think that could be very, very, very effective. Ms. Schmelzer, I think, had her hand up next.
Well, I just wanted to comment that, you were asking how the board felt about being at 50% capacity in the restaurants. You have to understand, our board did not put those restrictions on the restaurants. Our board did not say they had to be at 50% or that they had to wear masks or anything, and neither did our public health administrator.
Okay.
So this county did not put those restrictions on their businesses. What we did do is we have a very strong economic development coordinator who sends weekly updates to businesses, and in there had some best management practices or some recommendations for them. So some of them are following that, but it was not mandatory. It is not mandatory in this county.
So are you still practicing social distancing then? Is that still something that?
It's recommended.
It's a recommendation, because that was my other question, is how would you monitor that restaurants are, people don't come in, 12 at a time and say, okay, it's our turn to come in. They come in bunches, or, it's an all or nothing kind of a thing. So I wondered how you were going to monitor that, and how your sheriff department would be handling if they came in and they seen that every table was set down.
Commissioner Gold?
I was going to say, we do not have the personnel to monitor people, and you have to get to the point where why would the restaurants do something to harm themselves
Exactly.
by not taking care of sanitation matters, et cetera? So
Very good. Thank you so much for that. I do appreciate that you guys do see that our side of it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have more?
Give us one moment. Next speaker.
Or did this 20 minutes, right?
I'm going to introduce Rick White as Port au Pints owner, and he will address your commission.
Again, my name is Rick White. Myself and my wife, Dr. Carol White, own a very small brewery, tiny brewery, and like you mentioned, we did pull life savings to start this thing. Not speaking basically just on trying to protect my own assets, my parents. My father's 85. He's got severe emphysema. My mother's 80. They're definitely in that risky group, and therefore I have them stay at home. I don't think that what we're doing is anything to add to the fear that's out there. We're trying to create a more comfortable level. Some of the things, the issues that kind of bother me is it seems like there's a lot of decisions made by maybe not enough minds. It's good, I think, to have a lot more minds. We have a lot of some things that don't appear logical. And it seems like, from what I've heard from you folks already and some of the information you passed on to Sherry, that it seems like you have a more logical approach to what you're doing. And I'm just asking for anything you folks can do to broaden maybe our input on our decision-making in our county that can kind of ease the pain. Right now I'm seeing a lot of, there's been so much fear generated that even as we reopen, I've reopened for dine-in, pretty similar to what's going on in Brookings. We're very careful. I mean, I'm a brewer. It's sanitation's number one.
and PPE is number one. But I feel that this fear that's there, it's going to take a long time for people to come back, even if we're totally open. People are just, that fear is it's going to take a long time for it to go away, what's been generated through the media. And that could have long-lasting effects. As a small business, we run up our credit through the winter, and then tourist season comes, and we think, wow, finally, we can dig out, and we're in our 5th year now. We're finally starting to see that. You get past that 4th year, things start to grow, and it gets promising, and then you're hit with something like this. And I really don't think we can recover if we open tomorrow, totally. Because of this fear that's been set, I don't look at us really recovering for 2 years. It's incredible what this has done, and I think a lot of it is very unjustified. And it seems like you folks kind of have a lot of that common sense about it as well. I am a big advocate of, especially this time of year, the masks and things in my facility. If someone's sitting there and maybe they don't have a cold, they don't have anything, but it's allergy season. You get someone that coughs a lot, it's going to make people feel uncomfortable. So I am kind of an advocate for wearing masks in those conditions. If you have, you have a tickly throat that day, and it's going to make the person feel like next to you, because I have to figure out ways to eliminate this fear. And so I want people to wear a mask if they're in that condition. I don't want them coughing into their elbow and things. It just, I don't know. So, but overall, that's, I think in general, we're just asking for another opinion, another community that's in our same predicament, basically the same kind of people. We're rural, small-town people, and I just don't think we fit into the mold of the big corporate towns. We don't do that, and we need to have our own plan, and I feel that we're operating very safely at this point. So again, I thank you for your time, and hearing me out, I look forward to any advice that you have, and especially those points that Sherry brought up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Gitlin?
Gitlin, I'd like to ask you another question if I could. How's your sheriff on this?
Our sheriff is supportive. Our retired sheriff is going to be speaking to you next.
Well, one thing I'd like to say to you is the more your sheriff can get involved in this and helping to communicate to the community, it greatly helps to settle people down some as well.
You know, gentlemen and ladies, what I see coming out of this meeting, I've already had a very productive conversation with Julie Schmelzer about some kind of memorandum of understanding between our counties where we can share services. And you recall a social service request you made of our county, and we're working on that. Of course, this COVID virus has kind of interrupted that. But I'd like to see on a future agenda item where we do outreach. We already have a sister city in Japan. Perhaps we can have a sister county relationship where we are exchanging. We have so many things in common. We have so many people who come up to Brookings, and particularly Brookings because it's only 27 miles. Right. And you folks come down our area, and I know I see you around the lighthouse and all these Oregon plates. And then there's so much there that we have in common. And I'd like to see that developed. Vice Chair Boyce, we were talking about that, where we can have some kind of an economic relationship where we're exchanging ideas on a regular basis, maybe even have a joint meeting at some point in the future where we are talking about things. And I'm not coming up here as a private citizen, but I'm actually coming up here, hopefully in the future, as a designee from our Board of Supervisors or someone to represent a 2x2, so to speak, and reporting back to our boards. I hope that's something that comes out of this meeting today that we're doing now. And on that note, if we can have retired Sheriff Dean Wilson come up. And Dean was our past sheriff and is retired, and now he is going to address you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for allowing us and permitting us to come up and talk to you. You are and have been our neighbors, our friends, our allies, and our advocates. As neighbors, we have lived in this area and we have long learned that we have to depend upon ourselves. We have to be self-reliant if we are to be successful. We have to turn to each other in these times when things are difficult and lean on each other for the things that we need, whether that be resources, whether that be help, whether that be aid. And that's partly why we're here, because in Del Norte County and Curry County, Brookings and Crescent City are so strongly tied together and have been all my life. When the Coos County Sheriff and I worked together, we cross-deputized our resources, our officers, so they could effectively work in California and ours could come up and help when needed and necessary, Sheriff Bishop and I. We did so because even though it was not usual, it was unusual, but because we had a trust, a bond, and an understanding that in our area, we have to look to our own resources to solve our problems. And our problems are your problems. This situation that we find ourselves in is highly unusual. I can recall the difficulties that we all faced when the timber tax dollars went away and the terrible cuts we had to make, decisions that we had to go through, and the unique finds we found ourselves in order to solve those and resolve those problems so that we could continue to provide the essential services necessary and needed in our communities. We find ourselves again in that same problem and position, not by some disaster, not by some act, but by our own hand. We have turned this knife upon ourselves and have caused the damage that our communities are suffering through. And it is only through our hand that we can stop it. And we stop it, we must at this point. State of emergency no longer exists. We are into the recovery phase, and we need to move quickly in order to recover and to have any salvation in our communities at this point. As a sheriff, I know that everything I did, everything was dependent upon dollars. And every day we go without the dollars necessary to recover our communities because of the fact that we have no services we're providing, no dollars, no tax dollars that are coming in like they usually did to provide those bed taxes or other taxes that so are desperately needed to provide the services. And we can't look to the federal government or to our state governments to bail us out. It's not going to happen. We have to dig deep in, suffer through, and fix our own problems. Our own recovery has to come with our own two hands. And they're not hands that need to beg for this. They're just hands that need to work for it. And we're asking and looking towards our communities to help untie our hands so that we can go back to work. I ask this as a retired sheriff because I know that the bodies that I put on the road, the calls, the call takers, and the services we provided are so necessary and needed. And every dollar that we lose, every month that goes by, every week that goes by, and those dollars don't roll in, more bodies potentially will have to be removed and cut from our services. And people will suffer. But more importantly, as a father, husband, and a businessman, our family had spent millions and built millions of dollars worth of value in our community through the hard work and through businesses that we created. Most of those businesses are dependent upon the tourist industry. Hotels, motels, my wife's family has built in Crescent City are dependent upon filling those up during the spring and the summer to hold on through the winter times when things are difficult and short. And we've lost our spring, and the way it looks, we may lose a good deal of our summer. The business we own is Ocean World. I hope you all know it. Hope you've come there at one point or another, brought your kids.
Could you repeat that, please?
Ocean World.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it is a tourist industry based. Kids come during the spring, during the last part of school to tour through from all over the area. And people come from all over the world and the country to enjoy the redwoods, but they stop at our little shop and our store and our tour and enjoy it. But that tourist industry is suffering, and we've lost our spring, and losing most of our summer. That's over a third of our income on an annual basis. Our employees, we've been able to hold on to them through the PPE. We're fortunate to get that. But that's only a temporary fix. I would hope that you will join, and I hope we can get our county and communities to push for the reopening of our national parks, because that is the draw that brings people back into our communities. This thing will not last forever, and I hope it ends soon so that we can go back to the things that we must go back, and that is to work. Protect those that we know by the science are our most vulnerable in our communities. Our nursing homes, our convalescent homes, our senior centers. Protect those people. Our hospitals need to be protected with PPE and with testing equipment. Our jails need to be monitored and protected. But we also need to put people in jail and keep them in jail because they are ravaging our communities and our people are suffering. I worked all my life protecting my community. 35 years in law enforcement. Not because it was a great deal of money. It wasn't. But because I loved my community, and I loved the people I worked for, and I wanted to see them have a good and fruitful life. And it is sad for me to say that when government causes the problems, we have to look towards each other to solve those problems and to fix it. And I hope we as a community and as neighbors will work together because we're all in this boat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Supervisor Gitlin, we have about 5 minutes. Is that okay?
I'm sorry.
We have about 5 minutes.
Yeah, we're going to wrap it up.
Okay, thank you.
First of all, I want to thank you, Chairman Pash, Vice Chair Boyce, Commissioner Gold, for listening to us. And I want to again take this opportunity to recognize your courage and leadership in setting a standard for which our county can look at and objectively look at how we can safely and responsibly open up our economy, just as Sheriff Wilson just mentioned, so we can salvage part of the summer and be sustaining into the future months. And the effects will be long-term, we know that, and it will be painful. But again, we want to thank you for taking the leading role in this. And at that point, I'm going to look for a dine-in restaurant on this side of the border, which hopefully will be, we'll see on the California side of the border. So again, thank you very much. And is there anyone else out there? I think we're all clear.
I just want to say one thing before you go. I love having relationships with other counties, other organizations. So your point earlier about the possibility of us forming a relationship as sister counties, I'm sure that this board would overwhelmingly love to do that. So
it will be reported in our Tuesday, May 26th meeting that we were up here. Again, I have to underscore, as a private citizen, not in here as an official capacity, even though I hold the position. I'm here as a private citizen, but I will report out that the importance of developing a sister county relationship is imperative so that we can answer issues having to do with Operations Director Schmelzer asking for some kind of social service that you've discontinued here, and then we currently have just 27 miles away. So that will be openly looked at, and I'm hoping that it will move in the direction, just as you said, Chairman Pash, that there is a developing and warm relationship between our two counties. We're not competing with one another.
Absolutely.
We are flourishing with one another. And again, thank you very much. Any other questions?
Yes, Commissioner Boyce had something.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not to take too much time here, but thanks for reaching out last Sunday and the 45-minute conversation we had. All of you have made a 2-hour round-trip drive. Can't thank you enough. There's a spirit that, I've been to Jackson, Josephine, Coos, and Douglas County Board of Commissioners meeting, but I apologize that I haven't got down to your supervisor a meeting to learn and to grow and to connect. And I'm going to encourage everybody in my county, and I certainly will, to go back and listen to all the people that just spoke. And I was anticipating some eye-opening and some terrific information, but it exceeded my expectations. And just really grateful.
Thank you, Court. You can rest assured this will not be the last conversation we'll be having. We've taken more than our allotted 15 minutes of time, and for that, we'll politely excuse ourselves. But again,
I want to revert back to one thing, if I may, Supervisor Gitlin. And it needs, we owe you a favor. We owe Del Norte County a huge favor. During the Checo Bar fire, your people absolutely dropped everything to get our farm animals, horses, etc., to the Del Norte County Fairgrounds. And it was, the way the gate was thrown open, the benefits to our citizens during that incredibly stressful time, I'd almost forgot that until just a few minutes ago, and I just wanted to extend the gratitude, and we'll gladly be indebted, and we hopefully it's never a fire that we that we reverse the gesture, but we want to thank you. That's all I have, and just to again accept to say thank you.
So noted,
again
and
for
that will
making
be
this trip.
shared with our board. And again, this is what neighbors do.
Thanks
They help
very
each
much.
other. Again,
Commissioner
much
Gold?
I
appreciated.
just have one final comment.
Sure.
I know myself, I worked down in Del Norte County for probably 30 years and lived in Brookings, and there are people who live in Del Norte County who come up to Brookings. Also, I am on the committee that's encouraging the last chance grade to be taken care of, so we are interconnected. And
Well, some of you may recall that I came before this board in this room in my capacity as supervisor with former Supervisor Chuck Blackburn and well-known realtor Kurt Stremberg, and we came here asking for, and we received a letter of support. This was back in 2013 for an alternate route around last chance grade. And we came to this room and we spoke to you, and you responded. Now, I see some different faces here that were here from 2014, but the outreach was there, and we're working on last chance grade. Of course, not a speed I'd like it, but that's a road that impacts us all, and coming to and ingressing and egressing our border. So we're going to hopefully move that along. And some time before 2039, we will have the road. Of course, I'm saying that's the announced date.
We're pulling for you.
You all know how fast the wheels of government move.
Right.
We all know that, and it's frustrating. Again, our thanks to you all, and we appreciate it and goodwill to you. Thank you,
sir.
thank you.
Thanks for everyone for coming.
Yeah, we need a deep breath after that.
All right, next we're going to move on to B, COVID-19 impacts to the vulnerable high-risk population. Ms. Curtis and Ms. Hunter. Morning, Ms. Hunter.
Good morning. I'm going to hand out some things. I'm Connie Hunter, and I live in Brookings.
One each. I mean, just pass that whole packet down.
Okay.
Pass that whole packet down.
Whole packet.
Yep.
Got it.
Pass that whole packet down.
Takes a while.
It's okay.
Oop, you don't get one. That's yours.
Okay.
Another,
Sorry about that.
yes.
Feeling bad for
Pass
those
that
trees.
packet down. Pass that
I'm not
packet
sure
down.
when-
And that's the last one. So I think there's only three, so one for each commissioner.
All right.
So, JJ, I have a housekeeping question. You worked with Anna Marie to make it so that she could Skype in. There's a place, a stopping place. Do I tell you then that it's coming up and we should get her up?
The Zoom logins required, and we tested it, it worked over here, but Ms. Curtis said it did not work in her sphere of accountability. her area of accountability.
So she can't come in today?
At this point in time, it doesn't appear so, but,
How about over the phone?
Can we facilitate that?
oh, yeah.
Do
I
you
will,
have her number? I think it's on the email that she sent.
yes.
If not, I can look it up.
I will ask our technological assistant, Miranda Plaggy, to help out on that puppy.
Okay.
247-3207, huh?
And then I have, they have I don't know how to do it, I've never done it before. I actually did a PowerPoint for today. Can we?
Sure.
Bottom right.
Do we want to call Miss Curtison right now, or
You know what, she can go now, or I am going to be talking about the things that, we
Slideshow.
can do as a community, and there's a stopping place where
Stop.
she can come in. But whenever she's online, she
why
can
don't we
go.
try and get her online now so she can hear what you're saying? And
Okay, that's what I wanted, that's what I was trying to figure out, which would be the best way to do it. She and I didn't, we cooperated on getting this going, but we hadn't, yeah.
From the beginning, why are you doing, I'm trying to work it.
And hers, she has a different PowerPoint.
I understand, but I was trying to get this to from the beginning, and then we could
and I have
minimize it after.
Miranda, she
Like
can't.
that.
She can't use the Zoom, so we're just going to call her. And she's just going to. Yeah, we
You
just
just
need to
call
call her
her.
on the phone.
And then somebody's going to have to move the slides along on this.
Okay, well, Anna has a different PowerPoint than this one. So whoever can go back to that main page, and we'll get Anna's up first. Sorry, I don't have the little mouse here to do that. Okay,
Connie, do you want the keyboard?
That'd
For
probably
the
be the
mouse?
easiest. The easiest would be the keyboard.
I don't know if she,
Do we, I don't see anything up here for her.
let's just go without it, and I believe that you have a copy of my PowerPoint, in hard copy. I will trade it with, so in your package from Anna Marie,
Yes, we have it.
The first one is her PowerPoint that she normally would present.
Is it this one?
Yes.
Thank you.
And so, were you able to get her on the phone?
in that area.
Okay. So do you want me just to go ahead and start then?
Yes, if you would.
Okay, then we'll, click me again back over to that. Okay. All right, that's what my concern was, that we'll get her in there at some point.
Is that what you need there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Sure.
And so, one of the things, and we can, yeah.
I can bring you the mouse.
If
that'll
you
help.
skip one, okay. All right, so the important thing today is, of course, behavioral health, and we're talking about seniors and veterans and isolation. But one of the things that we have to look at, and you'll have more information, you can read it easier and go through it. Oregon Health Authority, in order to balance the state budget, every part of the state is being asked to offer ideas on how they can cut up to 8.5%. And behavioral health side of things at the Oregon Health Authority, Steve Allen, the director, gave a really good, clear statement about that. And I'm just going to read some excerpts because it does affect what things look like here. This is Director of Behavioral Health at Oregon Health Authority, spoke to stakeholders, and I participate in their different Oregon Health Authority calls and webinars. But he said, we think it's important to know that these are not cuts that OHA wants to make. These are not cuts that we believe are in the best interest of the behavioral health system and the people of Oregon. We understand any cuts will be especially hard in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic, where we are all experiencing loss, social isolation, and stress. Need for behavioral health services arguably are more important now than ever. I also acknowledge that these cuts that are proposed to our general fund programs would disproportionately affect historically underserved communities, and that'd be us, rural communities. So this is going to affect us in a big way. I put some highlights there. It's going to affect our CCOs. Includes cutting Medicaid funding, $64 million. But I think to behavioral health total, it's 69. But if you take the $64 million in the general fund, and that also translates into a total of $233 million in services due to the federal match that augments the state's money. So when the state cuts, they don't get that federal money too. And so it's a bigger cut than 8.5% technically. And so we need to keep that in mind. I've already reached out to the city of Brookings, the city council, and asked them to write a letter to the governor to say, you know what, have a heart for our rural communities, especially those that have high populations of veterans and seniors when it comes to those behavioral health cuts. And another thing is reduction in rental assistance and the choice contracts. These would mean more people would be unable to maintain safe housing, and state hospital would have more difficulty discharging and transitioning people in the community. Well, they're cutting the state hospital funds too, so that means there are going to be, less people actually going into the state hospital, and all the services at the state hospital are going to be affected negatively, and that affects us here too, especially with so many incidents of behavioral health problems here in Curry County and the state in general. I think that's all I want to cover there. There are very broad and deep impacts from these proposed cuts. Should they be implemented, these proposed cuts will have a devastating impact on the behavioral health system and the people who depend on it. So that's not good news. So we have to be smart, we have to be
Hang on one second,
collaborative,
Connie.
and we have to...
Oh, we lost.
Hello? We lost the call. But I think this might be Ms. Curtis's kitchen.
Nothing. Go ahead and continue, Ms. Hunter, please.
I don't see her toes there,
So
JJ.
please,
She's on the
bear
screen.
with me. Anyway, Oregon has one of the highest rate of mental health incidents, mental illness, addiction, and suicide rates in this country. As you know, we have been ill-equipped to address the scope and the scale of the behavioral health needs of children, adults, and families even before the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, this affects older adults here as well. And there's an older adult behavioral health initiative at the state level that is a SAMHSA grant. And basically, I tapped into that older behavioral health initiative by connecting with their specialist for our area. The funding that SAMHSA provides supports a project director and 24 behavioral health specialists located in communities across Oregon. And they are meant to improve access to behavioral health care, provide awareness of unique needs of our seniors to providers, seniors and veterans. It provides community awareness and outreach so that that's really code words for stigma busting, letting people know that behavioral health is a good thing. It's an important piece of the puzzle for all our health. Senior resiliency toolkits we're developing right now with our senior older adult behavioral health specialist. She called a meeting where we've been, and I mentioned it a long time ago on the cooperator calls, that the older adult behavioral health and special toolkits.
One second. Ms. Curtis?
Yes, I'm here.
You've got something playing in the background. If you could turn that down, please.
Probably a meeting.
There we go. It was
Okay.
Miss Connie here.
That's great. Okay, I just Ms. Hunter's doing her presentation now, so if you would stand by, please.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, Anna.
Connie. Anyway, our specialist, we had a meeting and there was some confusion, but the work product is that there will be guidelines. It'll be an 8.5 by 14 piece of paper that's folded. There'll be 10 pages total, and it'll have good information on self-assessment for loneliness, self-assessment for personal needs like food and so forth. And then there'll be a phone number to call that's not an 800 number. So this is to reach out to those seniors that don't have computers, that are homebound for some reason. And I just wanted to, I'm not going to repeat some of the statistics in my presentation because I noticed they're in Anna's, but one of the things that I really want to point out, in Oregon, men are about 3 times more likely to die by suicide than women. The highest suicide rate in the state occurred among men 85 and older. That's shocking. And then Oregon has the highest rate in the nation of those 65 years old or older hospitalized for opioid-related issues such as overdose, abuse, and loneliness and isolation may be as harmful to yourself. And we can go ahead down some of the, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to tell somebody to click that. Just go to the next page.
We have this really hyperactive mouse. Okay, is that the one you want?
So one of the things that's some of the work that we've been doing, the community partner phone calls with the Oregon Health Authority specific to COVID response and behavioral health, the older adult behavioral health initiative, how to cope with isolation, and the Office of Consumer Activities, Brandy Hamsley. We've been working as a group to see what peer support can do in this continuum of care, because, and I hate to say this, we're going to need cost saving, and peer support is something that often can get you from point A to point B quicker than a whole system. So as we build those peer support, that's important. But that's some of the other things that we're working on, including developing outreach materials. We'll go on to the next one, please. We've already done that. I was talking about the Senior Resiliency Toolkit. So we're not going to have an 800 number. If people call, they're not going to be sent to some other number somewhere else. So this tool will be able to be distributed a number of ways, and I would hope that we'd be able to have some here so that, if seniors need that information, it'll have information on help with your utilities, where you can get food, where you can get support, all of that. But have some fun in it too. We're looking at doing multiple issues of this, almost like a newsletter. Let me go on to the next one, please. Thank you. Why focus on older adults? Those statistics I'm not going to go over again. Anna has more to back that up. They even have Alcoholics Anonymous online these days, but not everybody goes online. And that's some of the people that we're trying to reach. We go to the next one, please.
Connie, you should be able to take your mask off there. You're safe. It's strictly up to you.
The reason I have it on is I actually saw somebody who reach over and do that, so
Fair enough.
protection. But thank you for concerning yourself with my comfort and for the presentation. And I already read that statistic. If you go to the next one. This is, I found to be very unusual, but 76,000 Oregonians have Alzheimer's disease or related dementia. So in our seniors, that's a problem, but you can go to the next one. Loneliness and isolation may be as harmful to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That's Oregon Health Authority information. I already read the information about opioid-related issues in seniors. Please go to the next one. 77% of Americans 55 years old or older who die by suicide had seen their primary care provider within 1 year of death. 58% had seen their provider within a month. So we need provider awareness, and that's something that Gordon Clay has championed all along at the Curry County Suicide Awareness and Prevention Council. And I know that's a goal of ours. Go to the next one, please. Combating isolation for seniors during the COVID-19 pandemic. The health outcomes of loneliness are pretty scary. High risk of severe depression, higher rates of cardiovascular disease, and Anna's going to give you more specifics, but increased problems with mobility means a lot of times you're going to have more falls and things like that, and when you're isolated, you know, that's a problem. But literally, isolation and loneliness can lead to earlier death, and the impact financially is $6.7 billion annually in health spending as a result of behavioral health issues among our seniors. You know, I'm going to go real fast over this, but the research shows the subjective feelings of loneliness may a risk factor for developing, and the and sign needs to be out there, developing disease, but it also can help toward poor cognitive performance and quickens, this is, I said another one, cognitive decline is what it's supposed to say there. People who reported being socially isolated but not lonely were not at increased risk for developing Alzheimer's disease or another kind of dementia. Go ahead, which there's a distinction that's being made. In our toolkit that's going to go out to our seniors, you know, it's going to have a lot of different things, but it's going to have some kind of self-assessment. And this is the one that was mentioned in our meeting just the other day, just a 3-question. You can figure out most lonely means you're most at risk. You know, that's the correlation they want you to make. But those are simple questions. Do you feel left out? Do you feel isolated? Do you lack companionship? So one of the things that we're working on, if you go to the next thing.
That looks like the life of a minority commissioner.
Pardon me?
It looks like the life of a minority commissioner. Couldn't resist. Sorry, Miss Hunter.
No, you know what? Humor is a blessing. That's all I can tell you. Older Americans Month is May. May is, you know, also Military Appreciation Month, and as you know, Mental Health Awareness Month. But the Older Americans Month takes time every year to look at the special things that our seniors bring to our communities. And older adults make their marks every day as volunteers, employees, employers, parents, guardians, mentors, and advocates. You know, they offer their time in many ways to benefit our community. And CERT volunteers are certainly part of that. If we could go on to the next one. This is a long way of saying senior isolation. Many of our seniors are already isolated. They already have to stay in. With COVID, it makes it harder because they don't have, they don't always have the support that they need to go out into the community to get their PPE and so forth. So we have some services that we're going to talk about in a minute. But what we want to really make a point is this unique time in our history is showing us for the first time the difficulty of isolation, a difficulty that many seniors face behind closed doors for years on end. When it's once again safe to enter the public, we must ensure that our older part of our population does not remain in isolation. It only takes a coffee date, a phone call, a knock at the door, or reaching out in any form to improve the health and life of a senior.
Ms. Hunter, how much time does Ms. Curtis need? Do you have?
I'm wrapping it up in a minute, but then we're going to give it
Thank
over
you.
to Anne Marie real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have about.
Great presentation.
Thank you. We just put one more thing and then I'll wrap it up. Some of the ways that you can make your mark, I've given you that information. We've turned a draft newspaper article, and hopefully parts of that, I don't know if you got it, but it talks about what seniors can do in our community and the kinds of things that we can do to engage our community of seniors. And one of the things that's happening this weekend is starting at noon on Saturday, they're gathering at Church of the Nazarene to do a cruise. And they're going to go all through Brookings, all the way down to Crescent City, but they're also going by the retirement homes. And Anna Marie has a great idea and a great project that she's working on. And so I'm going to turn it over to Anna Marie from that point on. Also, just when you look in your package of information, there's information on the senior loneliness line, and that's important. That was talked about at our Suicide Awareness and Prevention Council meeting as a need that was identified by one of our folks on that panel. So we're sharing that information today. Anna, it's all yours. I'll let you self-introduce because you're a wonderful spokesperson. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Curtis, you there? Hello? Showing it's still on.
What if we come out of the? Not there, huh?
Why don't we do this? It's past the 10 o'clock hour. Why don't we take a 10-minute break? Maybe we can get this corrected, get Ms. Curtis back on the line, and be ready to go in 10:20.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Oh.
Yeah, we were calling for you, and you weren't there. We just, well, why don't we go ahead and do your presentation then?
Okay, if you can hear me, I'm here. So I am on the first page of my presentation there, which is going to be, sorry, are they hearing me?
Yes, we are.
We just turned the volume down a little bit, Ms. Curtis. Do you need something on the screen here?
There's also a delay. I think she's.
Yep, I can hear you. Sorry, it just has a little bit of a lag there, so I'm going to turn the volume down so I don't hear myself.
You're fine now.
Okay, good to go. So on the first page of that presentation there, if you will, this is a little bit hard here because I can't see what I'm doing. So the lack of technology here, me not standing there, makes this a little bit challenging. So the first page of that presentation there is going to be the Curry Community Together program. And I really want to thank Ms. Connie there for all those fantastic facts there that gave us a ton of information to show how important what this program here that we're doing is. And Curry Community Together is going to be a community support program of coastal home health and hospice. And that second slide, if you will go to the second slide there, we are going to talk a little bit about the social isolation and the loneliness of the aging population. And we were going to talk about what is the Curry Community Together program. And that's in the second slide there. If you go down to the third slide, I'll tell you guys a little bit about coastal home health and hospice. Our mission at Coastal Home Health and Hospice is to provide quality, compassionate, holistic care to our patients and their families at home, supporting and honoring the personal choices during illness and at end of life. Our vision is to grow and expand services to meet the needs of our community. We are dedicated to standing out in our community by providing our patients and their families care from a team of experts and building a care plan that meets our patients' individual needs. If you go on there to that fourth slide, as you've seen there, my name is Anna Marie Curtis, and as the marketing manager for CHHH, I work to get our message out to as many people as possible. I am super passionate about providing the aging population with the tools that they need to make decisions about home health and hospice care. I focus on planning events in our community that will engage and educate our aging population, brand awareness, multi-channel advertising, and collaborating with other organizations to create a circle of support for our patients. I want to move on there to the next page there. Some of the risks of social isolation. According to the National Institute on Aging, they say that the loneliness can lead to issues in both physical and mental health, as Ms. Connie there spoke very, very much about there, and also she so greatly talked about there, and especially during the COVID-19 pandemic that we're experiencing right now. It's just so important that we are doing everything we can to put these folks first and really make an effort to get in there and really show them as much as we can and really try to figure out a way to get as much attention into there as possible in the homes. And they're in lockdown. We don't know how long this lockdown is going to last. So it's really important that we figure out a way to combat social isolation that we're experiencing currently. 64% increased risk for dementia due to social loneliness and isolation, and that is just in general. That's not during COVID-19. So if you think about right now we've got COVID-19 on top of it, what does that look like for them? That's going to be on that next slide there. If you will move on to the next one. Next slide. 32% increased risk for stroke due to loneliness and social isolation. Next slide, 29% increased risk for coronary artery disease due to loneliness and social isolation. Next slide. So how do we protect this population that's already at risk for loneliness from those health risks that come along with isolation during this COVID-19 pandemic? What is Coastal Home Health and Hospice doing to help? In times of public emergencies or natural disasters, the physical safety of our patients is always top of the mind. At Coastal HHH, we know what it takes to care for a sick or elderly family member. The next slide, please. Healthcare entities such as CHHH have a role to play in addressing this widespread and costly problem. New communication approaches and partnerships with the community-based organizations have the potential to combat these issues like never before. Next slide, please. Community is collaborating together because alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. And you see here some of these logos here are just a couple of the examples of the people that I've been able to collaborate with this project on. Creative Juice Crafts, she has very generously donated a large banner to help us advertise for this program. She did put together the coloring books that I've given you guys all there to look at. We have Vera Ann International Real Estate has offered to put a Dropbox location at her location there in Gold Beach. Ray's in Port Orford is going to be a Dropbox location. We have Remax, Coast and Country in Brookings as well as Harbor. That will be Dropbox locations. Tiffany and Nevaeh as well will be Dropbox location. Leadership at Heels has been really helping promote this on social media. And then as of yesterday afternoon, we also have the grocery outlet in Brookings that has joined on to be a partner as well. And then of course Connie and the VA have also been huge supporters of this project as well, and helping us support the veterans that are in isolation as well. So we've all been, really, it's been a huge community effort to make this program as successful as it's been going. So a little bit of the more information about the program here. If you go to the next slide, what we are doing is we're providing positive messages to our seniors. We're providing emotional support through letters, artwork, cards, then we have the coloring sheets that you have there. to all the 4 facilities in Curry County: Shore Pines and Gold Beach, Monarch Gardens in Brookings, Azalea Gardens in Brookings, and Seaview and Harbor. We are filling buckets together in Curry County. So we have buckets that have been painted by local artists and placed at businesses from Brookings to Port Arthur. Excuse me. Drop boxes will be used to collect all these messages for the seniors. I've also put together a website and resource connections called currytogether.com. It was created for this program to address the needs of those facing social isolation in our community. We also have the Community Smart Partnership, and this has just really been a true community effort in which many voices came together to advocate for the seniors in Curry County. Website and resources, so just a little bit more on that website there, that currytogether.com. It's going to have where all the drop bucket sites are located in all the different communities along the Curry County coast there. Mailing information for where people can mail all of their messages to seniors. Download links for the coloring books that you guys have there that are provided by Creative Juice Craft. Resources such as the Friendship Network that Connie was discussing, Meals on Wheels, Coastline Neighbors, Veterans Crisis Fund, and as people are finding resources, they're sending them over to me and I'm adding those to the website. So if people need to find resources, they can go to that website and find that information there as well. And then there's a contact form where people can request for help as well. A little bit more information is the weekly pickups and drop-offs of those messages are coordinated by the staff at Coastal Health and Hospice, with the safety of the seniors as their number one concern. And then we also have local print shops, a local print shop that's printing up yard signs for the promotion. All of the proceeds of the yard sign sales are going towards gifts for the seniors that will be purchased from local small business retailers. And then if you want to go to the very last slide there, my last one there. In conclusion, our seniors need to know that they have not been forgotten about. Not only is social isolation taxing on their mental health, but as you've seen with, what Connie spoke about and myself as well, it also has long-term consequences to their physical health. The Curry Community Together program has brought together many different people all over the community to combat social isolation in our aging population. Today, I am here to raise awareness for the issues and hopes to bring this cause to the forefront of our community. And I just want to thank you guys so much for giving me the opportunity to speak today. And I also want to add that I think it's really, amazing that we're launching this program this weekend on Memorial Day with the ride for the senior homes and, getting the buckets out this weekend, especially since we have so many veterans in our community, and really trying to reach out to these people this weekend at a time when they're all so isolated, and everything that Connie's doing and all this is just so amazing. So I want to thank you guys very much for letting me speak today.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Boyce, Commissioner Boyce had a comment.
Just a big thank you for taking this time and the patience and getting on the phone there, and your presentation was very good. I presume that both you and Ms. Hunter did your presentations at your offices, and regardless, very well done. And what a super reminder. Our average age in this county is 58, and so very apropos for our citizens here, and just anytime we get an education towards the public awareness, very helpful. Thank you, Ms. Curtis. Thank you, Ms. Hunter.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave. Very much.
And thank you. I just want to mention that I didn't print out the coloring books for you guys. I will if you want it. I figured you already had enough on your plate.
And no crayons to go with it.
No crayons.
Yeah.
All right.
So Anna, I ran out of paper to do that. So I'll get it to them if they want it, and we'll chip in on the crayons. Anyway, thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
addressing
again.
this problem.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, we're going to take a 10-minute recess. We will reconvene at 10:35. Back in session. It is Wednesday, May 20th at 10:36 a.m. Moving on to our next agenda item will be the consent agenda. A, minutes to approve the minutes for business meeting on April 22nd, 2020. B, to adopt a new job description combining maintenance and construction work 2 with mechanic. C, promotion of employee Robert Holcomb from the road department. D, 2019-20 supplemental budget number 2. E, 2019-20 supplemental budget number 3. F, to approve OHA contract amendments increasing awards, Cherie Ward, Public Health Administrator. And G, to approve a credit card for Park Coordinator. Do I have a motion, please?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Number 7, discussion and action items. A, resubmit 2021 CAFA grant forms 7 and 8 with a reduction of $40,000 in capital outlay expenditure on line 8, form 7. Mr. Colon, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jim Colon, Curry County Assessor. I made an error on the last submission of the CAFA grant. Essentially, what I did was add in a payment amount that is in the 2021 budget for our new computer system. But we'd actually put the full amount for the new computer system into last year's CAFA grant. Leaving it in this year, the Department of Revenue caught the error. It would essentially have been double dipping the CAFA grant, if you will. And so we just need to make this correction. It removes the $40,000 from the line on Form 7 in the CAFA grant. You all got a copy of that, and then it also changes the totals on Form 7 and Form 8. And so I'm just requesting that you approve that resubmission of the CAFA grant and give signature authority to the chair so we can get this submitted by June 1st.
I make a motion that we approve the correction that Mr. Colon made on that grant.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
7B, economic industry and small business recovery updates related to COVID-19. Ms. Madison.
Why don't we skip over that?
We're going to skip over Ms. Madison and move on to C, North County Paving Bid Award with signature authority to the Roadmaster, Mr. Christensen. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. Richard Christensen, Curry County Roadmaster. I'm looking for signature authority to the Roadmaster from the board for $500,000 of road improvements with paving in Port Orford area. We also in this is that we reached out to Port Orford if they needed any of their roads paved and if they'd like to piggyback on our quotes, and they did. And so inside this award is the city of Port Orford to repave a portion of their road that we share with them on Port Orford Loop.
Is that the 171,000?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to D, Dyer Partnership, $40,500. Task order number 20 for engineering services for Lower Harbor Road storm drain, head wall, and sediment basin, Mr. Christensen.
This is a project that has been developing over the last year or two with the port, and it's not one that we were particularly ready to design this year.
but the road department feels that with the situation we are in with COVID-19 and that there's going to be stimulus money coming in, and if for shovel-ready projects. So we would like to move forward with this design to have a shovel-ready project in case any stimulus money comes in. If not, we'll put it on the shelf, and it's going to be part of a master plan projects for the port. But we're thinking there might be a chance that we'd be able to get this on 10 cents on the dollar.
Well, I don't know who thought to do that right away, but that was pretty inept thinking, or adept thinking there, not inept. Good job.
I have a question. Rich, about a year ago, we met jointly with the port, and we talked about all the issues and how we could resolve them. Would this help resolve some of the issues that we're having out there?
Absolutely. This is one of the main issues where a lot of silt and debris come down from Harbor Hills and goes through all the private storm drain systems, the county storm drain system, and the port storm drain system, and sediment fills up the commercial basin full of sediment.
So we're actually going to go through the entire parking lot on this one in Harbor, right?
Yeah. And so what the thought with this one is the port would give easements to the county, and the board would accept them, and then we would put in a sedimentation basin on port property in an easement dedicated to the port for us to maintain. And that would help the port from having these issues in the future. We have all the equipment and staffing that can easily maintain a sedimentation basin.
Commissioner Gold?
I was just going to say that's really an ongoing issue with the port. They've had to have dredging and all kinds of things going on there because of all the sediment coming down. So I think it's a great plan, especially since there's a possibility of getting some grant money. So
Great job, sir.
Thank you.
Great job. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve this Dyer Partnership Task Order 20.
Second, Chair Pash.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Moving on to E, Dyer Partnership, $23,523, Task Order 21 for engineering services, North Bank Chetco River Road Storm Drain Head Wall, Mr. Christensen.
This is a county culvert that flows into Loeb State Parks, and it flows across the Riverview Trail, and it washed out the trail this last year. And I requested State Parks to block off the trail to use, and it's a widely used trail by the local citizens and tourists. And so I'm working with State Parks, and they very much support this project, and they plan on giving us easements. And so what this is to engineer and design a new storm drain outfall and culvert so they can reinstate the trail. And we also are hopeful that this could be a shovel-ready project in case stimulus money comes up. But if not, I'll have to amend my budget for next fiscal year maybe to fit this project in.
Commissioner Gold?
Is the State Parks, are they going to help with the funding of this, or no?
No, they're looking to help with just providing easements.
Okay.
All right. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I will move that the board approve the Dyer Partnership 23,000 Task Order number 21, North Bank Chetco River Storm Drain.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
I see Summer Madison is there now, so why don't we go ahead and try and get economic, industry, and small business recovery updates in. Ms. Madison?
Roadmaster Christian, you were
Like
3 for
Wisconsin.
3. Thank you.
Morning.
Morning.
You got to adjust that microphone there.
This one? Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Morning.
Good day.
Okay. Well, welcome to week 1 of phase 1 in reopening Curry County. Got some quick information I'd like to share with some documentation that will follow an email so that it can be loaded for the record. Local business owners are happily
busy adjusting to functioning under the requirements of Phase 1. And it's been a great supported movement and collaboration between the cities and the unincorporated businesses to make sure that everybody's resourcing what they need. Focused on understanding of the requirements and distancing of tables, restaurant seating, reinforcement of PPE, game unit placements have all been prominent questions that we've seen come up in disseminating the requirements of Phase 1, and they can be overwhelming when you're not sure what they mean. So it's been a great opportunity to help small businesses resource how they can make those happen without bringing on additional staff they have yet to have the income to pay for. There's an emphasis on social distancing, sanitizing, and masks with the recent uptick of cases in neighboring Del Norte. Also wanted to throw out a reminder of the PPE support that SOWIB, our local workforce investment board, is providing at cost. Masks, sanitizer, and more at sowibsupply.com. We are aware of 5 businesses that have decided to close their doors amidst COVID-19 throughout Curry County. And 2 of those are in Harbor, and 2 are within city limits of Brookings, and 1 in Gold Beach. There's talk of a couple more, but those have not been confirmed. A couple of weeks ago, the Regional Economic Recovery Team promoted a poll to help us identify what types of funding and services our small businesses needed after the initial SBA EIDL and PPP were processed. So here's the results of that as of last Thursday. Mind you, those results continue to come in, but this is what we have so far. So there were very few questions asked. The first was, what county is your business located in? And 33% of the respondents claimed Curry, with 65% of those being in Coos. Next question was, did your business apply for SBA funding, such as EIDL or PPE? So the response to yes, we applied was 48% for EIDL, and for PPP it was 53%. The no's, my business did not apply, was 33%. And then my business is currently applying for was at 2.5%. So it looks like those that are looking to secure funding through SBA, for the most part, have already done that, whether or not they've received funding. So then the question is, did your business receive funding from SBA programs? The funding response for EIDL was 18.5%, yes, they received it. Yes, they received PPP, which was 44%. My apologies, 43%. No, we did not receive the funding, was 44%. And then one that really caught my attention, the question was, my business has not heard about SBA loan options. And that was 9.9%, or the number of respondents was 8. So that's really a market target that we will be connecting with firsthand as they've provided their contact information. So the last question is, does your business need more funding? 76.5% responded yes, 6.2% responded no, and 19.8% said maybe, follow up with us later. So the goal of that poll was to help us identify where we needed to focus our efforts in support of small business. Last week, the Economic Development Department, as a DMO for the county, applied for a grant from Travel Oregon in the amount of $10,000, which is the maximum ask for each applicant. And the purpose of this grant is to inject funding into the small business community to support funding of licensing, utilities, procurement of PPE, and marketing. And those are the needs that repeatedly are brought to our attention, and resources are limited on that. And so that's what we have applied for. The awards will be announced by the end of the month. As a result of this poll specifically, CCD is our Regional Economic Development Representative, applied for the region on Monday to Business Oregon, a grant, and the ask was based on the results of the poll that I shared. Because there was only one application in the region, chances are good that we could receive funding in excess of the original request. So that's good for us. And if you recall, a couple of months ago, we had the conversation about some type of fund that we could invest in to help support these small businesses and where we might be able to pull that funding. And so, albeit it's quite a few weeks later, but this Business Oregon Opportunity Grant will help us meet that match. Let's see. This funding will go to support small businesses in loans and grants needed as a result of non-receipt of SBA loans. We're also currently working on a grant application through the Economic Development Administration, and we'll share the details as the process moves forward. We're still in the process of identifying the gaps for services to the small businesses and what we as a department can provide to help promote those services even more. Last quarter's county TLT collection was just over $91,000. April's TLT collection is at $67,000 and change. And that's a minimum shortfall of $24,000 or 27%, with potential shortfall of over $47,000. Okay. Statewide loss is currently estimated at 40%. Transient lodging didn't close until March 27th in Curry County, days before April's TLT collection. We see a slowdown in travel by March 16th when guidelines urging people to avoid social gatherings of more than 10 people and to restrict discretionary travel was suggested. With current occupancy rates at 45% countywide last year at this time, the lodging industry has leeway in implementing phased restrictions as we approach the month of July, which typically produces an occupancy rate of at least 55%. So Miranda has produced a resource document pertaining to the effects of COVID-19 and tourism, and that document will be submitted into the record. But to summarize that information, any rebound in travel and tourism will slowly start and stay closer to home. Optimism that coronavirus will get better in the U.S. in the next month dipped to a 4-week low. Americans estimate the distance of their next road trip will be 423 miles on average, although 43% report it will be less than 200 miles. American travelers also said they would be avoiding crowded places. In fact, 55% of them said that. And often a hallmark of the urban travel experience. 50% of them also said that they would avoid destinations hardest hit by coronavirus, which have predominantly been cities thus far. When asked the place they will visit on the very first post-pandemic trip, beach resorts and destinations were the response at 38.2%. Small town and rural areas was 30%. A significant number of them also say they will be taking more road trips because of coronavirus, road trips lending themselves to exploring lesser trafficked and nature-based destinations. Nature-based destinations indeed have an opportunity to position themselves well for post-pandemic travel, introduce themselves to new travel audiences, and even grow and sustain market share into the future. Opportunity to grab market attention for our Wild Rivers coastline is emphasized. So you see with some of those responses and the percentages that this is a great segue for us to capitalize on some of the rural frontier beach destinations not having a high count in coronavirus will actually be to our advantage in marketing for tourism. The conversations for greater collaboration throughout the county and region to support small business and tourism as at the forefront of efforts as we discuss revitalization of our economy and plan for more resilient and sustainable industry. With the loss of revenue over the past couple of months and the anticipation of a slow but steady recovery, it is reinforced that the regional approach will be the most productive. And from this, we've seen that as many restaurant owners and hotel B&B owners that we have, there's really not a collection or an association representation for those industries. And so that is something that we've identified that we would like to have them as, a collection where they have a unified voice. So, instead of reaching out to 40 different business owners in a specific sector, they have a united voice and could submit the impacts, the needs, and come together and support one another in that. That's all I have.
Great.
Thanks.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate that reference to the frontier spirit. Curry County, greatest spot on the western North American continent, most diverse and most unique. Thank you. I always try and stay a step ahead of you on this whole economic development, especially with this, but it's impossible because you're always one step ahead. And I appreciate that very much. The information you send out is timely. It's just not a forward to get it off your desk. It's always really pertinent to whatever specific time period we are within the COVID-19 public health crisis. So thank you for that. And then, just keep doing what you're doing. Our goal here is to look at all the businesses and keep that number stopped at 5. I think you mentioned, and just keep getting the word out that we're here to help, and we do not want them to fail. We understand the tremendous mountains that they have to climb to stay in business and employ people, and we're there. And it is one of our top 3 priorities right now. So thank you for your work. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Madsen.
Thank you for your time.
Council, we didn't have a hearing at 11, did we? Was that next week?
Public hearing we did, yes.
11 today?
Not today.
That's next week.
It was on there.
It's for next week. That's what I was wanting to just make sure of.
It's a public
Oh,
hearing.
June 3rd, okay, 2 weeks.
Sorry about that.
I just saw it come across the emails today, so I just wanted to make sure we were at that time.
Road vacation, June 3rd.
Okay, sorry. Next, we have F's, software purchase, dog licenses, out-of-county property registration, county licenses and permits. We have a public comment first from Mr. Barnes and then Mr. Fortman.
Thank you. David Barnes again. I just want, I'm watching again, and, it's another $100,000 going out the door today. $16,000 for this, another $80,000 for the feasibility study for a new courthouse. It's almost another $100,000 going out the door today. If you need to track dog licenses, Excel's a great program. Start with 01 in the first box and run it all the way down. Name, address, dog type, that's all you need. You don't need a $16,000 software program for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fortman? Morning.
Morning, Commissioners. Dave Foreman, Curry County Code Enforcement Officer. The issue before you today is a request for $16,000 to purchase a software program that does multiple things besides dog's licensing care. As you're aware, my department's responsible for the dog licensing program, for the out-of-county registration program, and this software provides for both of those programs. But more importantly to the county, is this software provides the same platform for business licenses, TLTs, health department, all the other departments. It also provides for a platform for the public to be able to submit requests for services to not only my department, to the Board of Commissioners, to the health department, to all the different departments. It would be automatically transmitted to them. They would have a tracking system, a response system, all built in there for the same price that it costs to monitor the dog licenses. All respect to the public comments here. Problem with dog licenses is it has been tracked by an Excel spreadsheet, and that's why there's less than 1% compliance rate in the county for dog licenses. And the same thing would happen if we go into this for the out-of-county registration. So we looked long and hard. We do not have, this is not a piece of software that just does this. It communicates between all of the silos in governments and takes those spreadsheets that we're currently running, planning's currently running, all that, and puts them together so that the public can access it and we can access on a time basis. One more efficiency is that software does is that about half the time of the code enforcement people's day is going out to the scene, talking to people, getting information, and then having to come back to the office, write it up, give it to our partners like planning, building, where we're referring people to. This software would allow us to be able to automatically go type this up in the field on any device, including an iPhone, so there's no special equipment involved. Hit the transmit button, it would come back to planning, building, whoever. It will allow the public to be able to report a pothole, allow all these things. The other end of this program is it allows all the agencies, all the partners in the county to be able to access the information. And you'd be able to go to one site and click on a property, and that would tell you not only what's on the GIS, but what dog licenses are there, what county registrations, what code compliances, what requests are being made, what is open, what's closed, if there's any concern about contact, if the person has any special instructions about the county. And it would be, and I've talked to all the department heads, they're all interested in sharing in this program. And give a quick example of how that works. This weekend, a couple weekends ago, I was called out on a business check where the business had gone away for COVID, left the pets in the pet store with a sign on the door saying, we'll be back on Thursday. Pets knocked over the water, there was no food and water. It's a licensed business, but nobody had access to the information. So the issue got into is whether the sheriff was going to have to break the door down to rescue the animals or not. And this program would have that information where the sheriff can access it, I can access it, emergency services can access whole neighborhoods of information and determine where it's at. So I too share the public's concern that we don't buy software that just does one thing. This does a whole thing. The particular package that we selected or recommending offers 120 different modules for everything in government. It's being run, and I've talked to multiple governments across the country, including one here in Oregon. I have examples of those of how it works. So for a $16,000 investment, it costs no more than that for the business license, all the other agencies to come on board. There's not one more penny to add all these other agencies. If we do go into specialized modules, the next kick up on the program, so I'm not misleading you, is unlimited number of modules. Right now, the 16,000 would buy us 5 modules of data. If we want to have access to all 120, then it goes up to $900 a month more.
So another $11,000. Question, if I could, are you done?
Yes, sir.
Sorry. So basically, we're just basically leasing the software from, if I read the packet right, from an individual.
Correct. One of the concerns when we're looking at where we're going at is our capability in our servers and carrying documents and all this. This is a cloud-based system. It's duplicated 2 different locations in the U.S. So it is an internet access system with no requirements on our IT. So yes, we are running the software. The information that comes to it will be imported out of our Excel, out of our tracking systems. We own the information, and there are eight other vendors now that do exactly the same thing. And if this company went out of business, we can transfer our information to another vendor at any point.
So the 5 that you're looking at right now, are they the 5 slots that we would have available for the 16,000, are they already used up? I mean, have you already basically slotted us something into that yet, or no?
Well, what we did was I sat down with the representatives of a couple of these and realized that, for example, submitting a complaint or a question to the county is a selecting down table. So if you want to make a complaint to code enforcement, you select this one. If you want to ask a question of a commissioner, you want to report a pothole, you want to report anything, you select it, the public would select it and it would go there. So it's not filled up. It's of the 5 modules that this would pay for, 3 modules is what's needed to be able to do probably 80-90% of what the county needs to do on allied fields. The 2 modules that probably, if the county wanted to do it, and there is some reticence, get into the complex building fees calculations that we use Acela for, that would be an extra module.
One more thing I did notice in reading the packet is this person is not bonded, and I'm wondering why we wouldn't want to have him bonded.
That's probably my mistake, filling out the form.
No, I think it specifically said that he wasn't bonded. That's just a concern that I would have, that he be bonded, especially he's holding county software, you know, those kind of things in his hands.
Originally, when I put the packet to the vendor being recommended, that was an option on the form either way, and they had no problems with it, and I say it will be my mistake, because when I looked at the option, I just took off.
So you don't think that's unreasonable to ask him?
It's not an issue, and if the board makes it, that's the requirement.
Commissioner Gold?
I just have to say, I grilled you extensively on this, and one of our problems, and we had a workshop dealing with this, is our departments are not conversing one with another. For instance, Harbor Sand had a complaint, sent it to planning, but that complaint needed to go to, because people didn't have permits, needed to go to the tax assessor's office, and apparently we're losing some communication here by not interchanging. We're probably losing money because things are not being assessed and so forth.
You're absolutely right, Commissioner. One of the biggest problems that I have in my department is we refer somebody to the planning to get the proper permits and all that, and we give them 30 days, and we don't have, because we're using that Excel spreadsheet, we don't have an automatic tracking system to come back. Planning doesn't tell us, we don't get it. This is the clipboard of things to do follow-ups on, and it is totally full. And this is the priority of the clipboard. This program puts it on a calendar and tells us this is past due.
Another question I have for you, Mr. Fortman. How many hours, let's just, a rough estimate, how many hours a week would you say you spend coming back here, filling out your reports and submitting them to the proper departments?
Great question, Commissioner. The biggest problem in my field is the majority of our cases are in southern or northern. So we spend all this time commuting. So whether my deputy or I are out there in the field, we do the interviews, we do these things, questions come up, do they have a license, do they have a permit? We've got to come back here to do that. So we lose the commute times involved. And then we have to sit here in the office and type up the reports where we could just do it on our phone and hit the forms and send the information. So I'm estimating that of Mr. Seaber's time, 50% of his time is wasted in this process. Of my time, probably 25% is wasted in this process, with another 30% of my time being wasted because all of these reports that we do are on manual, and they have to be then entered into the database, cataloged, shipped out. So I spend one whole day a week just doing administrative things to keep the paperwork up.
But the paperwork's still going to have to get done. It's the travel time and all of that this is going to save you.
The travel time is going to save us. We can be more productive in the field because you're not asking, I'm not going to be asking myself or Mr. Sieber to do, like I do, 8 or 9 calls, stops in an area and try to remember everything to come back and do the paperwork. He can drive down the street in 5 minutes, do the paperwork right there, what's in his mind.
Would you reasonably think that this software program would save the county how much on an annual basis, do you think?
For my department alone.
Estimate, just an estimate.
Oh, I've already ran the numbers. My department alone is creating another position. Salary's worth another position, okay? And I think that health department would be the same thing. They would use it. It would save a lot of money for planning because, again, people get referred to planning by us. They come into planning, do the initial questions, and then they never come back. And nobody's following up. And so thousands and thousands of dollars have been dropped. And it's not until a month or two later we get a new complaint on the property, we go out there and go, you were supposed to go and get this permit.
Right. I would hope the public would understand the breadth of this, that it is not just for dog licenses. It can do so much more, and we can add to it further if we find a need to do that for another $11,000 a year. So I commend you for looking into this, and to me, it looks like a great program.
May I answer a public question that was just put to me? This program, unlike a lot of the programs we use...
What was the question?
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner. Is there a module for county finance? Okay. This program, the simple answer is no. This program is not about financing and accounting and all that. It's about making all of our systems work and talk to each other. And the problem we have with Acela that we tried to make use, that is an accounting program that they were trying to make code enforcement, building planning, and all that work on their accounting program. And it's just reverse engineering, and it just doesn't work.
So as far as a budgetary process on this, where are we going to find the money?
So Dave has calculated it into his current budget, that he believes his current fees that we're imposing will cover it. We did in the upcoming budget, we projected fees in the upcoming budget for the coming year that were to cover staff's time doing this, which can now cover the software, which will free staff up for other things. And then just one other thing I wanted to add real quick was this did meet the strategic plan test, which says we are supposed to try to find efficiencies through software wherever possible.
Well, I think just the tracking alone, just tracking, you're going to know where everything is. The different departments are going to know where building permits stand and all that stuff. In your inspection process, they get instant information for a building permit. Once you clear it, part of something, you put it in your computer on the site, and they get instant information. So those kind of things are great.
We get feedback some of the times when we give a warning. The person comes back here to planning before we can even get back and tell planning what the issue is. Planning's making a decision on what the public has said to them, and then we show up next day to talk to planning and go, that's not what we saw here.
So do I have a motion?
I move to approve this software.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion?
I have a comment. I do think the board should make it contingent on not waiving the requirement for the bond.
I'm sorry.
Not waiving the requirement on the bond.
I apologize. I think that's my error.
Which would mean we're changing item 2 in the contract to say it is not waived.
Okay.
So we all
I'll
have-
make that correction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And a second?
Second the amended motion. Thank you.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. A great job out there. You guys are doing a great job. G, public access to county offices and services. I have a public comment for Mr. Colon.
Hello again, Commissioners. Jim Colon, Curry County Assessor. I'm not really sure where your discussion is going to go on this item, so I hope that whatever I have to say to you today won't be just redundant for you. I've shared with Julie my concerns. I always get a little concerned when I see her put something in an order such that services will be reinstated to pre-COVID levels. When I think of pre-COVID levels, I mean everything was pretty wide open. But I think, Julie, you assured me that we'd still be looking at doing things such as social distancing and disinfecting and stuff like that. And you know, other than that, I'm happy to see Curry County opening back up. The assessor's office, as you know, has always been open by appointment, and that's been interesting for the last month and a half or so. But it's worked out pretty well, and our staff has stepped up and really made a strong effort to serve the needs of the people when they call in or go on email or whatever. But my next comment with regards to opening back up Curry County with regards to after the COVID thing is during this last month and a half or so, you may or may not have noticed county employees have gotten pretty used to parking on the street out here around the courthouse. And Curry County does have a personnel rule that prohibits county employees parking on the streets out here around the courthouse. The idea being, and I was actually in office at the time the commissioners adopted this personnel rule, was to keep those streets open and available for our public when they come to visit us and conduct business with us. And I think that's a really important thing that we should continue doing. And so my request to the commissioners today is, as you open back up Curry County, you also begin enforcing those parking rules for employees on the streets out here around the courthouse. I'd like to see those kept open for the public when they come to do business with us. That's just a request.
I've actually been guilty of that myself because there's been expecting nobody here at the offices. I've been actually using some of the street parking as well. So yeah.
Well, and that's just it. Right. I mean, we haven't had as many of the public coming to visit us. And so, I mean, naturally, the employees have gotten used to using those spots out there. Right. I'd just like to ask you to put a reminder back out there that now that the public will be coming again, let's go back to parking in the parking lots or on other streets other than these around the courthouse. That's my request.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Melzer?
Okay, so about a month or so ago, maybe a month and a half ago, we met with the department heads and asked them, their thoughts on reopening. And at that time, the conversations were, let's wait until the governor has us reopen for phase one before we actually open our doors like we were before. So now that we're open for phase one, what this order would do is it's basically saying the employees are going to come back to work. They're no longer going to be working from home. They're all going to be expected to come back to the office. The doors are going to be open like they were pre-COVID. We are continuing to take precautions. The governor has put guidelines out for the workplace, which we do practice. This week we had tape put in the hallway to make sure the chairs don't get moved, to make sure we're keeping that social distancing. We're working on new signage that will be hung up tonight or early tomorrow morning for the doors to encourage people to continue to contact us via email or to set up appointments, provide the phone numbers and the websites like we did before. We had more hand sanitizing stations installed in preparation for this. We have some departments I don't know if you've been down in the planning building safety area, but they now have plexiglass up. So a lot of departments have really taken precautions to prepare for this. So we feel, or I'm recommending that we reopen to the pre-COVID levels, meaning staff, as of tomorrow, they come back to the office, they work from their office, and that the doors be open from 8 to 5 like we were before.
I think as long as we have the safety precautions in place, I think we're fine.
And of course, the public would need to know that our public health will be monitoring the situation in the county, and of course, that can be adjusted at any time should we get an outbreak. So do I have a motion?
I move that we open up the county as stipulated with the safety measures in place.
Do I have a second?
Second, Chair Pash.
Further discussion?
Comment.
Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to comment on the parking. So I was only made aware of one employee that was parking on the street, and I did address it. The complaint was given to a commissioner who shared it with me, and I addressed it. And it was an employee who was unloading and loading equipment and then left the vehicle on the street a couple times. So I did talk to the employee. It's no longer an issue, but we'll send a reminder out when we tell the employees we're going back to normal hours and service levels, that as a reminder they have to just stick to the policy on where they can park.
Perfect. Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you're saying there's only one guilty party?
One that was brought to my attention.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
I don't
I'm
go out and
guilty
patrol-
too.
I don't patrol the streets,
Too
but if
many,
people bring
so-
it to my attention, I do something about it.
I confess.
All right, so no further discussion. Roll, please.
Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes?
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Next, we are going on to H, re-obligating pre-2008 Title III monies. Ms. Schmelzer.
Yeah, so when we were working on the budget this year, we found a note in the budget that said the old Title III monies had to be obligated by the end of this fiscal year. So what we hadn't spent them because we were saving them in case, my understanding is we were saving them in case there was some big search and rescue disaster or emergency. And then we were also going to allocate $5,000 of it to update our wildfire protection plan. So knowing that was in the budget, we knew we had to get these monies re-obligated prior to the end of the fiscal year. I did talk to Rocky McVeigh from ONC and asked him, if he knew why that deadline was in there, and he really didn't. He said that he understood we had another year before we would actually have to re-obligate those funds.
The year October, I think.
September. Yeah,
September,
very
yes.
close, yeah. So I went back through all of the public law acts which talked about the original monies. I went back through our orders. I couldn't find anything that said it had to be done by this fiscal year, so I'm thinking that was a motion or something at some point. But I wanted to err on the side of caution since we had that alert in the budget saying they had to be obligated by the end of the fiscal year. So what I did was I talked to departments and about their needs and came up with a list of how I thought those monies should be re-obligated. First of all, you have to understand it's not quite $69,000 that's sitting there. And if we don't obligate these monies, we're going to basically lose them. We're not going to be able to spend them. So I did talk to the sheriff's office, and they have these fees they pay every year. They have what they call COSAR. It's a search and rescue fee for California and Oregon. And rather than take it out of the budget, we can pay for it out of this Title III money. So because I can obligate for the following year as well, I put $3,000 for this fiscal year and $3,000 for next fiscal year. And then I put money in there for search and rescue education, and then $20,000 for miscellaneous equipment needed for the forested areas, and that would include any training involved with it. And let me just go back a little bit. We're limited in where you can spend the money. It's very specific. You can't just spend it on, I don't know, lighting in the courthouse or something. It's very specific what that Title III money can be spent on.
I think for the sheriff's department on this here, they're looking at drones now, or so they save so much money and time by putting drones up in the air to search for people.
And that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, they're going to be looking to expand the drones as well as dogs.
Yep. So one of the other areas that we can spend the Title III money on, and we've already verbally committed $5,000 of it to Coos Fire Patrol, was to update our wildfire protection plan. So I kept that in there, plus another $5,000 for the printing. And then in speaking with Rocky, he said we should really put some money in there for implementation of that plan. So there is money in there for the implementation, which includes education, and then basically teaching kids as well about forest fire protection and things of that nature. we're hoping that as part of that, we can also gain a little interest from the youth to get more people interested in wildfire protection and firefighting, which is also one of the goals we have with the project that Commissioner Boyce is working on out on Jerry's Flat for that fire training facility. And then the last one, something we could use the money on was for Firewise communities. And in the couple years ago, there was a presentation, or there was some work done by a previous, I think it was by the previous planning director on Firewise communities, but it was never adopted. So this does allocate money to update the comprehensive land use plan, which is very outdated, to include that language, and to update the zoning code and the public hearings that are involved with that, and then of course that public outreach to make sure the public understands what that involves and the educational materials that they're going to need for that. And that is what the money would be reobligated for. Keep in mind, this is just the pre-2008 money, the old money. After that, the laws changed, and so we have different Title III money that's not included in this proposal.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you're giving generalizations. What you want us to do today is an action item to initiate this money. That doesn't mean it has to be, that term means that it doesn't have to be initiated to a specific project yet. You're giving us a general idea of where you think it might be good recommendation.
No, we do actually have to obligate it to a certain area. So, and I look back through the records on how we've done it in the past, and this is how we've done it in the past as well, is we say X amount for this, X amount for that, but it has to stay within those parameters that we've got guidance on where the money can and cannot be spent.
That's why I asked the question. Once you obligate, you're bound to follow that path. And I think, the work you've done here is very good. I'm just not ready to go A, B, C, and obligate it today. I don't think we have to, but we do. We're doing some housekeeping here, some cleaning. Back to Goose Forest Protective. Have they been paid 5? Do they need another 5? I'm not sure exactly what implementation of the plan means. I mean, we're 10 years down on that plan, so we are really overdue. I think we have some reasonable excuses why we haven't got it done. But I just don't want to move today to obligate specific projects. I want to put that off for a while. So,
okay.
But how wide of a, in other words, you've got to obligate it to a comprehensive, or let's say wildfire protection plan, but how wide can that deviate?
So that's general, and that might work.
Well, it's, so that's saying that 30,000 of that money has to be towards the wildfire protection plan, the implementation of it, what's involved in it, basically
So it's
everything under that umbrella.
It's a pretty wide umbrella, okay.
And just so the board knows too, at a later date, if you want to re-obligate those funds, you can, but you're going to have to stick within the items that we can use the money for.
Okay. Anything further? Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the plan as suggested for spending the Title III monies.
I have a second? I'll second.
Discussion.
Further discussion?
Definitely, Mr. Chair, I think this is definitely the right direction to go. It's just where we've been so distracted with so many other important responsibilities. I think we just need a little more time to really follow through with this and be careful what we obligate today based on the work that's been done. There's some different people working on this, and I don't see an urgency, so I'm going to oppose it.
Well,
if you want to have the vote today.
Well, what I'm seeing though is membership dues for COSAR, which is 2 years, so it's $6,000 for that. Public education can be very broad, and I'm sure even if you were to use that on your Jerry Flat site for educating once that is up and running. I mean, those are things, anything to do with wildfire protection, those kind of things. So I don't really see a problem. Miscellaneous equipment. I mean, if that was something we needed for fires or for mountainous terrains or any kind of training, any kind of those kind of issues. Again, I think that the depth of this is broad enough that we can implement this today, and like Ms. Schmelzer said, as long as we stay within a guideline, we can use it for so many things. I just don't want to get things looked over now and then maybe get busy with something else and we don't get it done in time and then we've lost it, as has happened in this county with previous boards. So,
Mr. Chair?
yes.
Reasonably persuasive. I just don't want to obligate it and then be in a hurry to spend it if it's not in our best interest till we get some more roundtable discussions and see where we're going with this.
I don't think there's a time limit on spending, is there?
I believe it's 2 years, so we obligate and then we have 2 years to actually.
We'd have 2 years to.
So we could come back and amend it and be more specific, not too general.
Correct.
Okay, you made your case. Thank you.
All right, so we got a first and a second and discussion. Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Next, we're going to look at I, which is contract with ORW Architecture to conduct a feasible study.
So the board had agreed at the last meeting to proceed with ORW Architecture for the feasibility study on rebuilding the jail, the courthouse, and the county offices. So now we have to actually approve the contract. So I've discussed the contract with ORW Architecture, and they did have some minor changes to our normal template that we used. Council has reviewed it and approved it, so we are asking that the board approve the contract so we can begin the project.
Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve it with just a little bit of discussion here. I think it's important for people to know that this isn't just a fly-by-night, oh, we get to spend more money, because the courthouse as it stands right now and the jail as it stands right now, if we could call it standing, is costing us a lot of money in utilities and all kinds of things. So I think long-term, this is going to be fine. We can get grants for building the edifices, whatever you want to call them, but I think long-term, this is going to be good for the county. So that's why I'm going to make the motion to approve it.
Do I have a second? I'll second. Further discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, we've been over this many times. I think long-term planning is very wise. I think what turned me just a little bit on a kind of a potential to support this, two things. 7 different companies bid on this, and that tells me they went in on this deal. You know, feasibility, I think, sometimes scares taxpayers that they go, oh, God, here's another study. I'm not saying that's what we're doing here, okay? But then the one line that really got to me was now adding beyond the courthouse and the jail, new county offices, if I understood correctly, and there isn't anything wrong with my office, you know, and so I'm just raising an eyebrow going, what message does this send to our people? You bet we need to look at this at some point in time, long term, but I couldn't possibly conceive of going to the taxpayers, even if it was only 20%, and saying we need to raise a bond to get this done. Notion, I'm going to dispute again, any notion that the courthouse has fallen down, it ain't so. You know, is it modern, and would we like to have a big, beautiful building that we could all be proud of? I think it's coming. Probably not in my lifetime, though. So that's why I'm opposing this. Thank you.
Well, I think there's a lot of ways to raise money and you know, to put the entire county as far as, and this is just my thought, you know, to put the sheriff's department, the jail, the courthouses, and the executive or the county offices under one roof would be the most efficient budgeting way to do it, using one footprint. Do we absolutely need new offices? No, we don't. But if you could do that and then possibly do something with this building for some kind of, and or the old courthouse for some kind of selling it off to someone that wanted to develop it into apartments and go in and completely redo the buildings for downtown apartments and those kind of things could, you know, those are just budgeting items that we could look at down the road. Do I think the courthouse is unsafe? Do I think it's going to fall down? No. But when you look at the elevators, the way that the sheriff's department transports prisoners, the unsafe conditions of the jail, having a judge look at me and sitting at his desk and say, just so you know, last year or 2 years ago, however long it was, this whole roof collapsed onto my desk. Those kind of things, and I personally have taken my fingers on the walls in the courthouse in the upstairs floors and literally scraped the concrete off. I mean, it literally crumbles into a powdery substance on your hands. So I would just hate to see a 5.0 or higher earthquake actually hit Gold Beach. I think the building would there would be a lot of injury and those kind of things. So this isn't something that's going to happen in the next 6 months. This is something that's probably going to happen, I would hope, in the next 2 or 3 years. So there's a lot of things that are going to change between now and then, and hopefully our finances in this county will change between now and then. It's pushing a big stone uphill, but to be proactive, we decided to get the feasibility study done, and this company has excellent references. They have people that have come back to them time and time and time again to do more studies for new buildings and developments, and that's a good sign to me that when somebody comes back and asks you to continue with a new position or a new job, that your past job was very effective and cost saving. So for me, we've got to move some things forward in this county, and yes, we do not have the resources to pay for a new courthouse and jail right now, but we need to start to plan for that. And I do believe we can get a good portion of this paid for through grants if we will work at that. Those are my comments. So we have a first, a second, and then any further comments? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold?
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce?
Nope.
Chair Pash?
Aye.
Motion carried 2-1.
Next, we're going to move on with the director's report. Oop, I'm sorry. Need to go to the microphone, sir, and identify yourself, please.
Matt Hall, Perry County reporter, reporter for News Myrtle Point Herald. Is the cost for the feasibility study the $84,930 that I see at the end of the document? Okay.
Sorry, it has to be on the record. Ms. Schmelzer?
Director's report. Well, first of all, I think I have to respond to a comment made earlier that I kept something from the voters. That is not true. And I believe what Mr. Barnes was referring to was when Commissioner Boyce used the Parks truck. And when that did happen last year, I had talked to Commissioner Boyce about it at that time. I asked him to document everything that occurred. He had talked to an employee to actually get the keys. I told him what he was doing. I had documented it, or he submitted the documentation to me. There were many, many people in the county organization that knew that Commissioner Boyce had used the truck. Commissioner Boyce did follow up with me and explained to me that the reason why he had used that truck was for tourism purposes. So that was not kept from the voters. It was not a big secret at all. I think it's just that people found out about it this spring. So I have to comment on that. The other one was that, yes, I do plan on beginning my decline in Curry County, I would say, July 1st, and we're in executive session. We are going to talk about that schedule of how things can transfer and start winding down. I just want to remind, I think everybody knew when I was hired, I wanted to come back for a year. I was asked to come back for 2. I'm a year and a half into it. I have to start doing the commitment to my family, which was that I would be coming back to Wisconsin. So I am starting that process. There are a lot of things, a lot of projects that I want to wrap up before I go, and that's stuff that we'll be talking about in just a few short minutes. I do have some other things real quick.
Can I speak to that after you're done?
How about in your comments, okay?
Okay.
So with, another thing is, by the end of the week, I'll be submitting the COVID reimbursement, which was from March 1st to May 15th. Looking at how much money the county had spent on that. Don't even ask me what the preliminary numbers are yet. I can tell you it's over $50,000. We'll start with that. One thing that Commissioner Pash had talked to me about was a continuity of operations plan for the county itself in the event of any disaster, like paycheck, just general operation things, not emergency management type things, but how we function to make sure that next time we're in this type of situation that government's not interrupted and we kind of have this all worked out ahead of time. So he had presented a draft to me in which I'll be working off of to bring back to you at a later date. And then I just want to let you know too that we're still looking at the idea of satellite offices. We just have not had the time to look at it with the COVID-19 and with everything that's been going on. We do have, you heard Mr. Fortman say today, most of our cases are either in the south or in the north. There's so much time wasted by employees driving back and forth. Everybody's coming out of this Gold Beach office. I mean, we're looking at environmental health going down there and building inspection programs and WIC. So we're still working on it. People just have to be patient with us. We haven't forgotten about that. And that's all I have.
All right. Well, my comments will be pretty brief as well. Somehow my work got stacked in with all the other stuff I got today. First thing I want to talk about is at the Fair Board meeting the other day, I had a great concern. And as many of you know, I have been one of those people that would like to seriously look at our special districts in the county. And in my opinion, one of our greatest presidents ever had a task force put out that said the fall of this nation will be through because of special districts and the burden that they will put on the United States as they progress over years and decades. So we have looked at, I've looked at time and time again some of these special districts and how we could possibly move into finding answers through consolidation and or through the disbandment of some of them that are not someone may feel aren't necessary. But one of the things that concerned me at the Fair Board meeting the other day was it was told to us that SWAC is beginning their consolidation, and they will not be renewing the leases at the fairgrounds. They are going to vacate the leases and consolidate those offices to either the campus in Brookings or the campus in Coos Bay. So again, we are paying, in my opinion, a large sum of money to the SWAC campus through the taxpayers of this county, and the resources that we give them are going up about 3% every year. In my opinion, the services are dwindling. So that's one comment that I had on that. Another comment was I've asked ODOT to look into some of the problem areas in the county where possible accidents are and problem intersections. The number one on the list is just before you get to the Wedderburn Bridge, on that curve right there coming off the hill from Port Orford down into Gold Beach. That curve, over the years, that intersection has been a point of many incidents. Actually, a couple of years ago, I think a D6 cat came off the back of a trailer right on the bridge, right on the intersection, and laid in the highway for a day. But there's always annually there's always accidents there. Luckily, we haven't had any severe injuries and death, but ODOT is looking into it, and they are looking to do a traffic study there to possibly, I've asked them to either put a flashing light there or a traffic light, because in a high peak season, getting across from North Bank, either across down to Jots or the other way, and getting out onto Highway 101, sometimes it's like literally shaking the dice and rolling them out on the road because you wonder if you're going to have time to make it. So they are going to do a traffic study there. They've also already told me that they are planning on doing literally road markings in the road and a larger sign on that corner there to make people notice it more, as well as putting bigger road signs on the road coming off the hill of the speed reductions. So we will be seeing a change on that intersection. There's also another area down near Cape Ferrello that they're looking at doing some changes there as well, and that may be a few more months in the making, but hopefully we will see some changes here in this one. I want people to realize that, it's been said that Ms. Schmelzer is leaving I think it was July 1st, and it is, as she has just stated, it's not the case. It's going to take a lot of work and planning in this county to find a way to replace her. I've stated this a couple of times, and I stated it again last week. She will not be leaving at the beginning of July. What she's planning on is planning an exit strategy over a period of the next several months, unless I can find a big enough chain that I know some bolt cutters can't get through and/or saws to keep her here. I've already asked the sheriff, and he's denied me use of the jail cell that he has over there. So I appreciate her being willing to spend the time and do an extra strategy plan so that she doesn't leave the county naked, but we actually can find the right people to get in place and get them up to speed on things before she leaves. And of course, I will wish her well when she does go. Those are my comments. Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Back to the vehicle use. That was not used for personal use. Director of Operations Schmelzer did not have to ask me. We immediately took the mileage before we left. We fill it up with fuel. We fill it up when it got back with about 3 times the mileage, and it was used. The trip up to the river was not personal. I'm not going to elaborate any more than that. It was 101 miles. I had a conversation with Glenn Casamassa that I'm very grateful for 2 mornings ago. It was yesterday morning, a 35-minute conversation. He is the regional forester for all of Oregon and Washington, and he just couldn't have been it was a good connection. I don't want to speak for him, but I think it's beneficial to my county of Southwest Oregon. Basically, I want him to understand that my concern, our concern, is that 3 out of the last 4 years, Curry County will be at risk for the entire state of Oregon, the highest risk for 3 out of the last 4 years, 17, 18, and presumably 2020, despite the rain that we've had this last week, which we're all grateful for. We're headed for a dry spell now. We also talked about our new fire training center, and he had some good input there on ways to raise funds and how he can, and his people through the Forest Service can support that concept. When I went to Washington, D.C. in December, talking to Jim Hubbard, Undersecretary for Sonny Perdue, second the whole in USDA program, that was productive too, but I just had the phone time. We've also, with Mr. Casamassa, and just the interest he has, that we all have, in protecting our forests and growing our forests, protecting our watershed, our wildlife, air quality, all the above. So, having said that, I want to read just a quick paragraph from Douglas County that came out right here. Wise people, I follow their daily report on COVID-19 faithfully, and their Board of Commissioners work incredibly well with their entire departments, and it is a very collective effort. So the paragraph is this, and how I think you'll agree that it relates quite a fine point to Curry County. Wildfire season does not pause for a pandemic. or for that matter, any reason, with a recent emergency drought declaration issued by the Douglas County Board of Commissioners for Douglas County, as well as by the commissioners in 4 other Southwest Oregon counties, the forecast looks like it will be a very dry summer in our region. Moreover, wildfire season for our fire crews, fire camps, and support staff will have a whole new mode of operation with regard, and this is really costly and yet critical, and I think the public needs to understand this. Support staff will have a whole new mode of operation with regard to all the COVID-19 health and safety guidelines. So it is imperative that our citizens will be even more conscientious this summer in preparing, monitoring activities, and preventing the risk of wildfires in our communities. And then it just says quickly that 70% of the wildfires, I'm not sure if I agree with that statistic, are caused by people, but we know that that is relevant and a concern for all of us. You know, in the Klondike fire, we had, 107 lightning strikes in about 26 hours. So moving on, the Jackson County Board of Commissioners, I also follow them very close. I think I left one of these on your desk. I think you all got this letter. And I just want to read a couple parts of it. The Jackson County Board of Commissioners assumes this is addressed to all the legislators and the governor and the House and Senate leaders, Senate President Courtney, House Speaker Kotek. And I'm just going to read part of it, but I want the public to understand what we're up against here in the CARES distribution and what was intended by the federal government. And boy, does Jackson County and their staff say it so well. And again, I think you can relate to Curry County. Citizens, dear colleagues, the Jackson County Board of Commissioners assumes you are aware of the state's draft plan for distribution of a portion of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act, funding currently under review. We have some significant concerns about the plan as presented and have many questions about the rationale behind some of the recommendations. Skipping down here, it talks about Multnomah, Washington, the other 34 counties. What do we take away from the recommendation that Multnomah and Washington counties and the city of Portland should use 25% of their $247,000 or $62 million receive for business and worker relief programs, while the rest of us warrant exactly zero for those same purposes? Our takeaway is that it will reinforce a widely held belief that the people of these mostly rural counties are not relevant and our well-being is inconsequential to them. The remaining 34 counties should be receiving a total of $506 million. When using the same per capita allocations as those two counties reference, the $106 million, $506 million less the $400 million, $200 million coming now and then likely $200 million coming in July is the word that we're getting. The point is this: these counties desperately need these funds for business relief grants and our economic recovery programs. It's not just going to be based on here's the money we spent with a COVID-related requirements and responsibilities, expenditures. We have to be able to help our businesses that are not getting help from the federal government directly, whether it's SBA, USDA, EDA, all the above, or payroll protection plan, which has not been that good for Curry County. Congress clearly intended that these funds be made available to state and local governments to help adequately respond to the public health costs and to assist businesses and workers mitigating the economic impacts of this pandemic. Further, as we know, we cannot wisely predict the future consequences for this pandemic. Even if we have no more cases, it'll be as it comes down the trail what we're going to be dealing with. We are the 26th largest county in terms of population. If you did the average, that's several million per county, outside of Multnomah, Washington, and the city of Portland. So I'm not saying we're going to, what I am saying is we need to make the case that those millions of dollars come back to Curry County, some kind of a lockbox. Eastern Oregon counties are doing their best to absolutely collectively put their heads together, the big combined effort. So I'll keep the board posted on that. I know that the two of you are also involved in that a little bit. It's if we just have $50,000 or $100,000 that specifically line item costs the county for our efforts to properly maintain and protect our citizens, that ain't going to cut it. That's not going to do it. So what I've promoted, and then I think I'm done, Mr. Chair, what I've promoted, and it's got some traction, not a lot, is that especially for rural counties, the money should be based on the proportion of population. It should be based on the unemployment rate prior to the COVID-19, and it should be also, and this is where it helps Eastern Oregon counties, which we sometimes relate a little better to, it should be tied to the distance from Salem. They have to go, they have to lobby, they have to conduct business. It's very, very important to their county, counties. David Brock-Smith was an absolute wizard at that, and I mean that as a total compliment, but it's part, you leave it sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning, you don't get back till midnight that night, but it's what we signed up for, it's what we have to do. So that distance could be measured in terms of reimbursement to the counties and a support for rural Oregon. I think that's it. Let me look real quick here, Mr. Chair. Yeah, that's it. Thank you for your time.
Commissioner Gold?
I'll make this short, sweet, and to the point. I've been working with All Care on getting grants out for COVID-related concerns. I also share the concern with Commissioner Boyce that there is a big inequity, how the CARES funds are being dispersed through the state. I don't know that there's a whole lot we can do about that, but I think it's very inequitable as to how they're being dispersed. That's it.
All right, with that being said, we are going to go into executive session, but what we'll do is we'll recess this meeting now. We will go into executive session, and then we're going to break for lunch before we start the executive session, but this meeting will recess now. And we will come back after executive session to finish our agenda. So we are in recess.